I am Kat Code. I am a data privacy consultant out of Canada.
Hi, I'm Jodi Daniels. I'm a privacy consultant out of Atlanta, Georgia.
And you're watching this video today and you might be thinking, why you guys have crazy effects on? Well, we have crazy effects to get your attention. So we're not actually talking about crazy effects today. But what we are talking about is vendor management, which is just as important as crazy effects because it keeps you and your company safe. So top 5 tips in order to keep safe and private with your vendor management. Jodi, what's tip number 1?
Tip number 1 is so much better with the red virtual beret. I got to tell you, tip number 1 is you have to know your vendors. Now, you already need to know your vendors and your sub-processors if you have to deal with GDPR. But the reality is whether you're small to big, multinational, you need to know where is your data going. And don't only think about those IT systems that the IT or technology department is managing. Think about all the cloud service tools that you might be using. What about that cool thing you signed up for to do surveys on? Often there are hidden vendors throughout the organization. So make sure in your data inventory that you're really asking all the departments, every place that they might be sharing or storing your company or employee personal data. What is tip number 2, Kat?
Awesome. You need vendor contracts. Almost every regulation for privacy, including GDPR and the US regulations, and certainly Canada, requires that you actually have contracts in place with all your vendors that are dealing with either your personal data or sensitive personal data. And those contracts actually have to be signed before you start dealing with them. So 2 really important things that should be in your vendor contract. One of them is assurance that that vendor will let you know if they've been breached. Otherwise, they don't have to. So they are your sub-processor or third party. They have to let you know. And the other thing is ensuring that their safety and security safeguards are up to standard with what is required for the regulations that you are trying to meet. So if you say that you're CCPA compliant or GDPR compliant, and then you bring in a vendor that isn't, then you're not compliant anymore either. So make sure you have those contracts in place that say what they're doing and what they're going to do if you're ever breached. Or sorry, if they're ever breached. Jodi, tip number 3.
Now that we've done our data inventory, we know all of our vendors, we've gotten our contracts ready. And then next week, the team says, oh, we're going to go use a great new vendor and then this awesome new service provider. So when we're choosing new vendors and service providers, we need to put them through a vetting process. Not only can they execute on whatever it is that we're asking them to do, but also to make sure that they can honor those privacy obligations that we just said we need to make sure we have in our contracts. So this often looks like some type of a checklist or working with the security team and the legal team. In advance, we need to be mindful of which regulations we need this vendor to comply with, any specific steps we want them to comply with, how are they going to use the data, and how do we manage or minimize that? And of course, the data breach obligations and individual right obligations that we would want to make sure that they can help us with. So making sure you can have a strong vendor vetting process for all those cool new vendors that you want to bring on board. Tip number 4, back to you, Kat.
Number 4, what if you are the vendor? What should you be doing? So one thing you can do if you're looking for GDPR compliance is set up a data processor agreement on your side. And so that is the contract. And then you can list all the awesome stuff that you're doing right there, and people will know about it when they sign on with you. But another thing you might want to look into is running a privacy impact assessment, because often if you're the vendor, especially if you're dealing again with sensitive data, companies that want to partner or use you are going to say, hey, have you run your privacy impact or data protection impact assessment so that we know that you've done your due diligence with privacy. Also, another thing I really like to do is a privacy and security policy or document. So once you run your PIA, you've already articulated all of these awesome safeguards that you're doing. You already have a list of like encryption techniques that you use. Pull that out into a document that isn't proprietary. So there's nothing secret about it. It's nothing internal. And then every time a vendor says, or not a vendor, you're the vendor. Every time someone says to you, hey, what are you doing for privacy and security? I want you to fill out a checklist. You can say, great, here is our privacy and security document. And it already tells you all of the things that we do. And number 5.
ties very well into what you just described, because if you're the vendor and you are trying to attract customers, you want to sell all the great privacy and security features that you have. So you have that handy document ready to use. But I love, Kat, how you said this, flaunt what you got. You want to be able to emphasize all the great features of your product or service that you're offering and the privacy and security features too. So when I'm the customer and I go to your website, I can easily see, oh, look, here's the DPA. Here are their privacy practices. Here are their security certifications or security measures that they have. Here's their view on privacy. This is the opportunity to showcase how strong your privacy and security features are and how you as an organization take it seriously. You're already thinking about what the customer questions are going to be. Now, Kat, what is our bonus tip?
Bonus tip. All right. So we've been talking about how to do vendor management from the perspective of a company. But when you're dealing with your own personal data, you're the company, and you should also be vetting vendors or third parties or products that you use. So Jodi and I were obviously having super fun with Zoom today and all of the extra features that you could do with it. But then we were thinking, you know what? People don't consider, in this terms, the process of vetting the apps that you're using. So a popular app right now that people are using is scanning your face and turning it into a Disney princess. You are giving away all sorts of facial recognition data to that app in order to do that. So in this case, your vendor contract is the terms of use. It is the privacy policy. So make sure as an individual, you have your own vendor process. You say, hey, here's an application I'm going to use with my personal data, and here's how I'm going to make sure that they're actually handling that data in a safe and secure way. So awesome. We hope that you have a better idea of how to bring in vendors, how to identify vendors, how to list your vendors. And as always, if you have any questions, post them below and we'll be happy to help you out. Thanks.
Thanks for listening.